When I first started this channel, I was hoping to cover a lot of different cases where there was still a lot of questions. I started with Nanette because I had a lot of questions and because I really wanted to know what had happened to her. Now this channel has pretty much become just about Nanette because I seem to have more and more questions as time goes on. There was some talk in the comments about DNA, so that's what I'm going to talk about today, as well as tyre tracks. That's one question I never even thought of. So the DNA. I had presumed with the amount of blood and the fingernail scrapings that there was probably going to be some DNA. But when I asked Kyle Simpson, he said that the investigation is ongoing and we can't comment on this. So my presumption was the same, but I didn't know for sure. Nanette was murdered only a few months before Margaret and Shauna Tapp, and you probably already know that the DNA from that case was contaminated. So I had no idea if Nanette's had been contaminated as well. Then I listened to the podcast, and Craig mentioned that Max Ellis, his father and Nanette's ex, had been ruled out by DNA. So now I have to assume that they do, in fact, have the killer's DNA on file. So what are they doing with it? I found it kind of strange that Craig said that Max was ruled out, but didn't say so was he and so was Greg. That would have been the perfect opportunity for him to clear his name, and he didn't take it. At the time of the podcast, there had been over 30 years of finger pointing at Craig. Everyone I talk to thinks he did it. Most people in the comments think that he did it. His daughter threatened me with legal action because she obviously doesn't like people thinking her dad is a murderer. But here, he had this perfect opportunity to say he had been ruled out by DNA too, and he didn't say anything. He could have been ruled out by DNA and didn't even think to mention it. I don't know. But if he had said that, I probably would have removed him from my suspect list, or at least put him way down the bottom until I could confirm if that was true. I always say no one goes off my suspect list until I know for absolute sure that they didn't do it. But people do move up and down on it from time to time. You know who has dropped down on my list? Greg. And that's because I actually spoke to a man who lived in the area at the time, and he said he heard Greg scream that day when he found the body. I wasn't taking notes or recording or anything because it was a really casual, spur-of-the-moment conversation, and I can't even believe I actually just ran into him. So I'm not going to be able to quote him exactly, but he said something like, he'll never forget it because it was blood-curdling. I'm not sure if he said blood-curdling exactly. Like I said, I can't quote him exactly, but it was something like that. It was something that he'll never forget it because it really was left ingrained on him. The feeling that came off of Greg sort of thing when he screamed at finding his mother's body. So either Greg's a really, really good actor or he just didn't do it. So after hearing that, Greg has gone way down on my list. Not off it, of course, because I don't remove anybody, but he's definitely down the bottom now. Craig also said in the podcast that they know it was a man that did it. I'm assuming that's because of DNA. I don't know how they'd know that otherwise. Also, I may be paraphrasing a bit there, saying that Craig also said that they know it was a man that did it. I don't know if those were his exact words, but it's pretty close. But I think we can agree that the police have a DNA profile of Nanette's killer. Then what are they doing with it? I'm really hoping that they at least have it in NCIDD. That's the National Criminal Investigation DNA Database. I know they call it CODIS in America, and that's what I'm more familiar with because I watch a lot of American crime shows, but we do actually have our own version here as well. And surely the profile is in there. If it is, have there really been no hits over the last 40 years? Well, technically, it's not 40 years because the NCIDD wasn't launched until 2001. So that's the earliest it could have been put in there, but that's still 23 years. I'm supposed to believe it was a stalker or some random attack, but then this person has never done anything criminal again. More importantly, we can use Ancestry.com and all those types of things to at least get the family line like they did with the Golden State Killer. Why has that not been done? Something just does not feel right here. I've tried to ring the new lead detective who's on the case, but it constantly goes straight to voicemail. I cannot get in touch. Now onto the tyre tracks. This was brought up by someone who sent me an email, and I had actually never thought about it before. Okay, so this is what I think the killer did after he killed Nanette. I don't think the killer cleaned up in the house, and here's why. There are no photos of any places, like a bathroom, kitchen, somewhere where there'd be a basin, where a person would clean up. So I have to assume they didn't find anything there. I'm pretty sure that it said they had checked the drains as well and found nothing. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what they said. So it doesn't look to me like they cleaned up. There's also blood droplets leading out the front door and then a small smear on the back of Nanette's car, indicating that that was the killer's pathway out of the house. Nanette wasn't in the lounge room or out the front door. So it's either the killer's blood or it's Nanette's blood which was dripping off him. I don't think he jumped the back fence because I think he would have gone out the back door, and I think they would have found some blood on the fence. There was so much blood in that house, it's hard to imagine that he wouldn't have been covered in it. So I think he went out the front. So where'd you then? I don't think he ran down the street. It was daylight savings, so bright as day. It was when everyone would have been coming home from work. Greg even says he saw a couple walking down the street and another guy coming down the street. In just the couple of minutes it took him to walk home and then go running back to the neighbours. So it seems like it was a bit busy outside with people walking around, people coming home. So I just don't think somebody coming out of the house covered in blood wasn't going to be noticed by somebody, even if they had a car parked up the street. Maybe they might have made it to their car without someone seeing if they had a car parked up the street. Maybe. Also, if they left droplets going out of the house and past Nanette's car, wouldn't they have had a blood trail going up the street? So that leaves one option. A car parked in the driveway. That would explain why nobody saw anybody. That would explain why the blood trail ends at Nanette's car, as far as I know, of course. So then even Nanette didn't hear a car come into the driveway, or she knew the person. Because the car would have come in after she had already arrived home, right? She didn't park behind anyone, and the witness who saw her go into the driveway at 5:15 didn't mention any other cars. I didn't ask Kyle Simpson if they looked for tyre tracks on the property because I didn't even think of it. So what do you think? Is this all total bullshit, or does it sound right to you? I really appreciate the people who have emailed me and who have commented in the comments. I think it's great that Nanette's case is being talked about and that people actually care about getting justice for her. Please keep them coming. In my next video, I'm going to go through all the questions that we had, see which ones we have an answer to, see which ones still remain unanswered. It might take me a little while, but I'll try to be quick as possible. I'll see you then.